Aita, drama, secrets, confessions. Welcome to Trove Reddit.
I once thought I was just an anonymous waitress. But it was me who saved a multi-million-dollar deal. Not with money, not with power, but with a steady gaze straight at the CEO screaming in the middle of a packed restaurant. That night, his entire career stood on the edge of collapse. And I, someone nobody ever noticed, became the only reason everything changed. You won't believe how I did it. But then, everyone in that room was forced to bow their heads to me. If you want to know the truth behind that insane night, make sure to subscribe right now. That day, I thought I was just working another evening shift like any other. The most luxurious restaurant in the city, golden lights reflecting off expensive suits, the clinking of glasses like a soundtrack signaling money changing hands. I, in my tight uniform, was nothing more than a shadow moving quietly among the powerful. But there was a truth I didn't yet know. Their entire fate was hanging on my shoulders. The man sitting at the center of the table was a notorious CEO. They called him the tiger of the business world, someone who could destroy a career with just one phone call. That night, he was preparing to sign a multi-million-dollar deal with international partners. The whole company, the press, and even enemies lurking in the shadows were watching his every move. Everything had to be perfect. One small mistake, and everything would collapse like dominoes. And then, the impossible happened right before my eyes. A plate dropped. A dish was prepared wrong. A casual complaint slipped from the customer's lips. Those seemingly harmless details lit the spark of a fury that would change my life forever. The plate hit the marble floor with a sharp, jarring crack. The entire restaurant went silent. The international guests frowned. And in that moment, I saw the CEO's eyes sweep across the room like a razor-sharp blade. He shot to his feet. The screech of his chair dragging across the floor made everyone flinch. He slammed his hand against the table, red wine splattering everywhere. Why the hell is everything wrong? This is the most important deal of my life, and you people are treating it like a joke. No one dared to breathe. The staff kept their heads down, a few trembling so badly they dropped their trays of glasses. The international clients whispered among themselves, their irritation plain on their faces. I knew. If they walk out right then, hundreds of millions of dollars would vanish as if they had never existed. I started to step forward, but then I stopped. This wasn't my business. I was just a waitress. I had no right to interfere. But my heart pounded in my chest, a strange voice pushing me. If you don't act, everything will collapse right before your eyes. The CEO kept shouting, now not just at the staff but at the clients as well. He threw the stack of documents onto the floor. You want to negotiate with a clown? Then forget the deal. The air grew heavy, thick enough to explode with just one more spark. And at that exact moment, every eye in the room turned to me. Because no one expected that I would step forward, placing myself between his fury and the client's cold, unyielding stares. I knew, from that very second, my life would never be the same again. I could hear my heart pounding. Not because I was scared, but because I knew one wrong word and I'd lose my job on the spot. But strangely, my feet still moved forward, as if an invisible force was pulling me into the eye of the storm. The CEO whirled toward me, his eyes bloodshot like a predator's. Who do you think you are, barging into this? The whole restaurant fell silent. A lowly server like me, daring to stand up straight in front of a notorious tiger. I took a deep breath. Sir, if you really want to save this deal, please let me speak with them. The room seemed to explode into silence. Someone dropped a silver spoon onto the table. The other staff stared wide-eyed, as if I had just signed my own death warrant. The CEO laughed, a dry, dangerous chuckle. You, a cheap waiter. You think these billionaire guys will listen to you? He leaned toward me, his voice hissing. Get out now, before I ruin your life in a heartbeat. That's when I looked him straight in the eyes. No looking away. No fear. And I said a line that made the whole room reel. If you want to lose everything, keep yelling. But if you want to secure this contract, you should shut up and let me handle it. The air seemed to stop. The international clients tilted their heads, and for the first time that night, they smiled with interest. The CEO went rigid, his hands trembling on the table. In that moment, I knew I had done something no one had ever dared, challenge absolute power. And force it to listen. I stood in the middle of the banquet table, clutching the tray as if it were the last rope keeping me from collapsing. Every eye was fixed on me. Doubtful, mocking, even pitying. But then I looked straight at the most important guest, the one who had just shaken his head in frustration at the CEO's outburst. I bowed deeply. I apologized for what just happened. Not as a restaurant employee, but as a human being who respects you. The guest raised his eyebrows slightly. The entire table went silent. I continued, my voice trembling but steady. I know you didn't come here to witness a cheap drama. You came here seeking partnership, sincerity, and perhaps a little trust. 1 second, then two. I saw their eyes soften. They exchanged words in their own language, and for the first time that evening, I heard a quiet laugh. I didn't stop. I quickly cleaned up the broken plate, then ordered a replacement dish, briefly explaining its traditional flavors, while weaving in a small story my grandmother once told me. A story about how Vietnamese people dine not only to eat, but to build connection. The guests listened intently. One of them nodded, his eyes flashing with genuine interest. They began asking me about the culture, about the people, about the meaning behind each dish. I answered naturally, as if I were no longer a waitress, but a bridge between two worlds. The CEO was completely silent now. I could feel his angry breath behind me, but I also saw the client's eyes turning toward me with true respect. And then the unexpected happened. One of the international guests stood, raising his glass. We came here looking for a reliable partner. And we just found that, in this young woman's words. The whole table erupted in applause. Smiles appeared, no longer forced, but warm and genuine. In that instant, I knew the balance had shifted. From a banquet on the verge of collapse, I had pulled it back. Not with power, not with money, but with my own courage. The room came alive again. Glasses were raised, laughter rolled on, but my mind was spinning. I couldn't believe it. Just minutes ago, everything stood on the brink of collapse. And now, these people, these powerful billionaires were looking at me as if I were the one holding the entire game together. One of the international guests set down his glass, fixing his eyes on the CEO. He spoke slowly, firmly. We agreed to sign the contract. But not because of you. The room froze. The CEO's eyes widened, his lips pressed tight. The guest continued. We agree. Because of the sincerity and courage this young woman has shown. If your company carries even a fraction of her values, then we can trust you. I stood there, stunned, my hands trembling, unsure whether to cry or to laugh. Never in my life had I imagined that a single sentence from me could turn around a multi-million-dollar deal. The CEO was another story. He dropped heavily into his chair, sweat beading across his forehead. For the first time, his eyes weren't filled with fury, but with something else. Something that looked a lot like respect. He couldn't say a word. Because in that moment, power no longer rested in his hands, but in the hands of an anonymous waitress. Then the contract was laid on the table. The pen streaked across the page with a sharp swish, clean, decisive. Applause broke out. The deal was sealed. And I was the one who saved it. That night, as I stepped out of the restaurant, the streetlights fell across my path, and I realized the truth. Sometimes, to change the entire world, you don't need power or fame. You just need the courage to stand up. In the very moment everyone else stays silent. If you want to hear the full journey how an unknown waitress reached the moment that forced even a CEO to bow his head, don't forget to subscribe, so you won't miss the shocking conclusion. After that night, my life was never the same. The CEO, the man who had screamed and threatened to destroy me, came to see me privately. No more furious eyes. No more shouting. He quietly said, "Thank you. Without you, everything would have ended long ago." Those words of gratitude felt strange. Not because I didn't believe he could save them, but because, in that moment, I realized a brutal truth. Even the most powerful people can lose everything to their own rage. And I, someone seemingly insignificant, had gained something money could never buy. Respect. He once offered me a job at his company with a salary most people only dream of. I smiled and turned it down. I didn't save that deal to trade it for money. I did it because I believe sometimes the world needs someone willing to stand up and speak the truth. Even when the whole room bows its head in silence. And that's when I understood. From rage to respect. The distance is only a single courageous word. And that one word can change everything.